covered by a blanket because there are crowds. But typically, as you would say, as a mother, you said, no, it's a tablecloth. And as I looked again, I said, yeah, it looks like a tablecloth. I had wanted to show you Table Mountain in its splendor, with the sun lighting on it and showing its true beauty. We're delighted because through you all coming here, we are advancing the close relationship and the long-standing relationship between South Africa and Europe. It's a relationship that's underpinned by what we call a strategic partnership. This is a partnership that's based on shared values, common interests, and clear vision of where the two parts of the world should be going. It's a partnership that seeks to create prosperity for our citizens and to promote peace, security, and stability. And we share a commitment also to another important value, which is inclusive multilateralism, as being the most effective means to address the most pressing challenges that are facing the world. We agree on the need to strengthen economic cooperation between us and to resolve whatever challenges that there may be, trade or otherwise, through negotiation. And this summit further our constructive discussion on the new investment package. Areas such as science and technology, education, skills development, climate action, peace and security, health, and the issue of critical minerals, and of course, trade between our two areas. South Africa is moving ahead with far-reaching structural reforms in our own political system. This we are doing to support South Africa's economic recovery. We are, as a nation and as a country, modernizing and transforming key industries, particularly what we call our network industries, as in energy, water, transport, and digital communications. We have already made considerable progress in this regard, but this we have been able to achieve in cooperating with yourselves as the European Union, particularly with institutions such as the European Investment Bank. Now, these reforms that we have embarked upon are contributing to the improvement of our country's competitiveness and also investment environment. An investment environment which we hope to keep on engendering so as to continue being an attractive place or country for many of your companies in Europe to come and invest here. Now, as one of South Africa's most important trade and investment partners, the European Union can play and does play a catalytic role in unleashing the productive capacity of our economy, but also to help equip our people, especially young people, to participate in the economy of the future. And we hope and continue that we can continue to rely on the support of the European Union and its member states in our efforts to address a number of our challenges, particularly how we can alleviate poverty and how we can also transition to a low-carbon economy, a feat that many of your countries in Europe have been able to achieve or are on the way to achieving more completely. But also how we can invest in climate-resilient infrastructure and grow our industrial capacity. This summit is taking place at a time of global uncertainty. The global uncertainty which we spoke a little bit about in our tete-a-tete, which is characterized by rising unilateralism, economic nationalism, and a retreat from what we've always wanted to advance, which is adherence to international law, a world order that seeks to advance all nations, which is also departing from what we would call human rights culture. We welcome the EU's support for multilateral institutions and the fundamental principles of the United Nations. We hope to work closely with the EU, as we've often done, as well as other partners to strengthen and reform institutions of global governance in order to make them more inclusive, but also to be capable of meeting the challenges of the times that we are living in and the future. We should collectively strengthen our voice, working together. And if there ever was a time when it is absolutely necessary for partners who share the same values to work together, this is the time, particularly when multilateralism is under attack, particularly when the world order process is also being weakened. This is the time to work together in defense of what we believe in: democracy, the rule of law, including the respect for international law and international humanitarian law. So we welcome the support of the EU for Africa's development needs. African relations with the EU should be built on a mutually beneficial partnership in the spirit of shared ownership, responsibility, respect, and mutual accountability. And we will also discuss our shared interest to advance peace, security, stability, and sustainable development. So we welcome you. This summit for us is important as it deepens and broadens our strategic partnership. We also want to thank you as the EU for supporting South Africa's presidency of the G20. You are one bloc that has demonstrated absolute positive support for the work that we have now started as president of the G20, and your participation in the various iterations that are part of the G20 process is supportive, is very positive and very progressive. So you strengthen our resolve to host the G20 almost 120 meetings, which will culminate with the Leaders' Summit later this year, where we will have the privilege of receiving you once again to South Africa. And with those words, I welcome both of you to the most beautiful country in the world and the most beautiful city that you have ever visited, Cape Town. So welcome. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you. So it's now my pleasure to hand over to yourself, President Costa, to say a few words, and thereafter to Ursula van der Leyen.
Thank you, Mr. President, Honorable President Cyril Ramaphosa, dear Ursula, ministers, members of the ambassadors, members of both delegations. Thank you, President Ramaphosa, for your warm hospitality and for bringing us together here in Cape Town. And it's a great honor for us to be here in this summit, the first since 2018. The world has changed profoundly in these past 7 years. Pandemics, conflicts here in Africa, in Middle East, in Europe, multilateral commitments are being tested, and the rules-based international order faces growing challenges. Protectionism, economic coercion, and hybrid threats undermine stability, while new technologies disrupt political systems and global power dynamics. In this world of uncertainty, our partnership matters more than ever. This is why today's summit is so important. The European Union and South Africa are not just partners. We are strategic allies, bound by shared values of democracy, human rights, rule of law, multilateralism. Our partnerships delivers real benefits to our citizens, our economies, and the world. We are united in our commitment to peace, security, and sustainable development. And we stand together to uphold the United Nations Charter, advance the Sustainable Development Goals, and drive forward global action on climate change, poverty reduction, and economic reform. We appreciate South Africa's leadership, both regional and globally. You can count on the European Union full support as you take on the G20 presidency and as we prepare together the next European Union-African Union Summit later this year. This year marks the 25th anniversary of EU-African Union cooperation, a milestone that underscores the strength of our engagement and the vast potential ahead. Despite the many complex challenges, this is not a time for despair. It is a time for opportunity, an opportunity to build, to strengthen, and to expand our bilateral and multilateral cooperation, to shape a world that is fairer, more sustainable, and more secure. The European Union does not see the future through the lens of division between blocs, between North and South. Instead, we see an interconnected world where our fates are linked and where joint action is not an option but a necessity. We want weaving a global network, and we start here precisely in Cape Town, when the Atlantic and the Indic meet together. Let us use this summit to deepen our cooperation, reinforce our commitments, and chart a course for an even stronger partnership. A partnership that not only benefits our nations, but contributes to a global stability and prosperity for our citizens, for our nations, and for our shared future. I wish us all a productive and successful 8th European Union South Africa Summit. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. I'd now like to ask Ursula von der Leyen to make her own remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Dear Cyril, for the very warm welcome that we receive here, me and my dear friend António Costa. It's a pleasure to meet here in Cape Town. And indeed, South Africa and Europe are united by common passions, by our great literature, by our love to sport, by our beautiful nature, our excellent wines, but most importantly, we are united by shared values and common interests. Both our unions arose from the depth of conflict and suffering. Both had visionary leaders who saw that the path to peace and coexistence was not recrimination, but reconciliation. South Africa remains an emblem of hope for the world. As your great writer Albie Sachs put it, and I quote, "South Africa gives hope that all societies can heal, unite, and emerge stronger." End of quote. And indeed, in the face of an increasingly fractured world, with the return of major wars on both our continents, that message of hope matters more than ever. And the cooperation between South Africa and Europe matters more than ever. And this is why we are here today, to strengthen the already close ties between our nations and our citizens. South Africa has a vital role on the world stage. You are a leading voice of the Global South. We are united by our democratic values and our shared commitment to unity in diversity. But we are also sharing fundamental interests, from ensuring peace and stability on our continents to boosting sustainable economic growth and strengthening our supply chains. This summit is an important moment to reflect on our relationship and to see how we can strengthen it further. And I would like to highlight three important areas. The first is trade and investment. Here you are already our closest partner in Africa and our only strategic partner on the continent. Every year there's almost 50 billion euros in trade between us, and 98% of our exports to the European Union are already duty and quota free, but we can and we must go further. Today, we are together announcing an investment package to mobilize 4.7 billion euro in South Africa, and this is in both our interest. It includes funding for the clean energy transition, but also funding to boost vaccine manufacturing. South Africa wants to protect the health of its people as well as your autonomy and your local industries. We Europeans want to diversify some of our most critical supply chains, and we know that viruses know no borders. So that is what I call a true mutual interest. Second, today we're launching negotiations on the first ever clean trade and investment partnership. The rationale is simple. The South African economy is growing in size and complexity, and you have the ambition to create more added value here in the country. Europe understands your potential. Take the clean hydrogen value chain. South Africa has everything to become a global leader. You have clean energy in abundance from wind to sun. You have raw materials that are critical for electrolyzers, including 91% of the world's platinum group metal reserves. And you have a rising industry to produce clean hydrogen and strong export ambitions. European companies are interested in investing here, but they need more incentives. So the Clean Trade and Investment Partnership can support. Together with private companies, We can unleash investments in clean energy, raw materials, and green hydrogen. We can boost local industry with agreements for the future production that gives them certainty. And we can facilitate the trade of made in South Africa products to Europe. We want to strengthen and diversify our supply chains, but we want to do it in cooperation with you. We want beneficiation. That is an important value to us. Our model is that we want to support the local jobs, the local added value, and high environmental and labor standards, because we both know that ultimately that is the best way for all of us to build more resilient global value chains. And third, we are enhancing our cooperation on science and technology. South Africa is already the best represented African country in European research programs, with funding for over 140 innovation projects across South Africa. Last year, over 1,000 South Africans came to study and teach in European universities, and we are now encouraging the exchange of even more students through your presidential PhD program. We're stepping up cooperation on research in artificial intelligence, in climate and health. So the message is very clear. Europe remains open for business and open to talented people from around the world. President Ramaphosa, dear Cyril, 2025 is a vital year for cooperation between South Africa and Europe. As we've heard, we are already working very closely, and of course we are working closely with your presidency of the G20. And I look forward to returning to Johannesburg in November for the Leaders' Summit. In a moment of increased global confrontation and competition, we must strengthen our partnership further. We must work closely together to ensure the future is built on our shared belief in cooperation and human dignity, in stable relations. We stay together the course. We give predictability and reliability, and I thank you very much for receiving us here today. Thank you very much.
I've been informed that members of the media usually, after hearing these wonderful speeches, want to take time off to go and digest them and rest a little bit. So would now like to allow members of the media time to go and rest, and we will see you later. So take your time in moving to the place where you're going to rest. We'll see you in a little
a strong voice for the Global South. We both are vibrant democracies. We both have chosen unity in diversity. And we are both striving for a safe and prosperous future for our people. We stand for rules-based international order, and we stand for the rule of law over the rule of force. So today, here we are with António at our first summit, António and my first summit together with a third country. What a perfect occasion. Thank you so very much, and I'm very glad that it is South Africa. Dear Cyril, we spoke together at G20 in Rio in November about green hydrogen and renewables. And today, to open this new chapter in our relations, Europe can contribute with, as you mentioned, the 4.7 billion euro investment package. We call it Global Gateway. As you said, it is around about 94 billion rand. And with this package, we want to work together on three key initiatives. First, together we invest massively in projects that support the Just Energy Transition Partnership. For example, an investment platform that will boost green hydrogen, batteries, renewables, all strategic industries for the future. We know that others are withdrawing, so here we want to be very clear with our message. We're doubling down with our support. We are here to stay. Second point, with this package, we are also investing in connectivity. We're investing in transport corridors, like the north-south Lubumbashi to Durban route, to upgrade railway and port infrastructure, so important for connectivity. And we are also investing together in digital networks. We will work on fiber and 5G, for example, so that South Africa as a whole country is connected, but also, of course, connected to the rest of the world. Finally, on health, indeed, we both learned bitter lessons during COVID-19, and therefore we support your pharmaceutical industry with 700 million euro because it means vaccines and medication produced in South Africa for the people of South Africa and the wider African continent. And it is both in our shared interest and in the interest of global health that we promote here the pharmaceutical industry, because we know that diseases do not know any borders, so we have to join forces to fight them. This package will already make a big impact on our economies and the creation of good jobs, but now we have decided to go further. The European Union is South Africa's largest trading partner. We are launching now negotiations on a new generation of trade deal. We call it a clean trade and investment partnership. And South Africa will be the first to sign such an agreement. Basically, it is focusing on investment in clean energy transition, from hydrogen to renewable, you name it, but of course very much focusing also on skills, on the new technologies of the future. And important is for us that we develop strategic industries from the start to the finished product. So creating good jobs and growth right here in South Africa. We put a lot of emphasis on what you call, dear Cyril, beneficiation. So that for us it's a key principle that we invest that the local value chain is being developed, that the added value stays here in South Africa. This is for us important. South Africa will benefit, our companies will benefit, and I think this is a true win-win situation. Our partnership will also extend to critical raw materials. We're here to invest along the full value chain too, from exploration to recycling. And we want to work together on the key industries of the future. I mentioned green hydrogen, but also, of course, electric vehicles and battery production, for example. I look forward to the signing of a memorandum of understanding. Our teams are working for it. And our plan is that we are able to sign in the margins of G20. Finally, dear Cyril, together we have launched a global campaign to power Africa with clean energy. As we all know, Africa has an enormous potential for renewable energy. The world is finally recognizing it. The World Bank has just joined our efforts, which is fantastic news, I think. We call it Scaling Up Renewables in Africa. And together we want to deliver cleaner, more sustainable power to millions of people. This autumn, again, in the margins of G20, we will hold a major pledging event to rally the world around this cause. It will take place in Johannesburg. Today's Global Gateway Package is, and its focus on clean energy is already a significant pledge, and we hope that it is a strong signal to others to join this pledge and to contribute. So, President Ramaphosa, dear Cyril, as António already said, we are 100% behind you in making South Africa's G20 presidency a big success. This is going to be the first G20 summit ever held on the African continent. I think it's a powerful symbol. And it is an opportunity to drive real progress towards a more equitable and more sustainable world in line with your priorities. So we cannot wait to be back in South Africa. Thank you again, Cyril, for the warm hospitality and the excellent summit. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. We will now open the floor to questions. And the first question goes to Kaya. If you could please introduce yourself and the media house you represent. Thank you.
Hi, good day. It's Kaya Kumara here from SABC News. Maybe just to get Mr. President, prior to this engagement, you were part of the SADC virtual meeting around the situation in the eastern part of the DRC, and we've seen the termination of some DRC's mandate. Just want to get your sense in terms of the way forward, especially after the successive meetings with East Africa and SADC region. And maybe just based on this engagement with the EU leadership, Mr. President, the issue of the current geopolitical tension, the trade war. It's been 7 years since you've had this gathering. Do you think perhaps the current situation, the geopolitical tension we see, do you think it really expedited things to really see South African EU leadership really having this gathering? Thank you so much.
Mr. President.
Well, this summit has been in the making for quite a long time. COVID prevented us from meeting earlier, and because we are so engaged in a number of other tasks, two presidents here with European issues and ourselves here with African issues and South African issues, we were not able to find the ideal moment. And now we have, and it's such a delight to welcome them here in Cape Town, what Ursula calls the mother city. And indeed, it is the mother city in many ways. So this has been in the making for quite a while. What is happening in the rest of the globe or the world is what we are all observing. The world has changed quite drastically from what it was when we last met 7 years ago. But what we are very pleased with is that our partnership, our relationship is firm, is strong, and what is going on in the world is even going to strengthen our resolve to remain partners in order to tackle the many challenges that are arising in the world, and more particularly for us as South Africa to really appreciate the support that we are receiving from the EU as we are president of the G20, and the support that we will get in the rest of the meetings that we are going to hold from the EU, and also an appreciation not only of our priorities as set out, but also of the theme that we have put out, the theme of solidarity, equality, and sustainable development. So we appreciate the support that we are receiving from the EU. On the first question, yes, SADC held its heads of state summit today. It was a special summit. And this was to re-endorse the positions that were taken by the joint summit, which was also very historic, between the SADC and the East African Community, where we called for a ceasefire and the bringing to an end of that conflict in the Eastern DRC through diplomacy and negotiations. And our summit today reaffirmed that position, and the decision to finally withdraw from the Eastern DRC by the three troop contributing countries is also based on the fact that the ceasefire that we have sought to install in that place is now being embraced, and we are going to see a ceasefire eventuating and getting the negotiations underway under the leadership of President Lorenzo, assisted by a number of facilitators, and one amongst them being former President of Kenya, President Kenyatta. So that, for us, is a confidence-building measure that enables us to then have a phased withdrawal from the Eastern DRC, and hoping that we will get the support that is needed from a humanitarian point of view, and indeed from a political point of view, to make sure that that ceasefire holds as the various parties, both state actors and non-state actors, parties collaborate, ensure that there is a permanent peace in that part of the world, so that the people of the DRC can carry on with their lives on a peaceful basis. So it is a forward movement of installing peace in the Eastern DRC.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Christine?
I have a question for Leyen. Given the change of course in U.S. foreign policy, how much more important is it for the EU now to strengthen alliances with its other allies? And how is the EU planning to reduce its political and economic dependency on the U.S.?
So, for us, it's very important to strengthen the ties, the bonds of friendship with like-minded countries and partners like, for example, South Africa, because what we experience in these relationships, and they have been built over years, is that on both sides there is high respect for stability, predictability, and reliability. And in these difficult times, with a multitude of crises that we are facing, it is important also for the people to know that we stay the course together, that we have a set of shared values that we are bound to, and that we are predictable and reliable. And this is for us, therefore, a very important summit that we are having here.
Thank you very much.
Second question.
Can you excuse me?
How is the EU planning to reduce its political and economic reliance on the US?
So for the European Union is very clear, we do what is necessary for us. And we have a very clear agenda. We have to increase our competitiveness, so we have to work on prosperity. And we have to step up massively the defense investment. We need a surge in defense. And therefore, together with António Costa, we are working intensively on the topic of competitiveness. As you know, the competitiveness compass that we have issued, the first initiatives looking at the different sectors, from the clean industrial deal to the automotive sector to the steel sector, for example. This is one side where we are pushing hard, and we have to step up. And we are in the process to discuss with the European Council, the Member States and the Parliament, the package for investment in defense, because we know that we have gaps in the military capabilities that we have to fill, and that we have to step up the financing of our security and defense. This is something which we are doing because it's necessary for us.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Wendell?
Wendell from Reuters, question is directed to Ramaphosa as well as to President online. In the light of Ukrainian President Zelensky's visit to South Africa next month, with me, are there any discussions to coordinate peace and security amongst the EU and South Africa regarding the Ukrainian situation?
So we had very good discussion indeed about where we can together contribute to the whole topic of pushing forward the peace process. And no one wants more peace than the people of Ukraine, and no one deserves more peace than the people of Ukraine. And therefore it was also a topic among us here at this summit. It is important that we work for just and lasting peace for Ukraine. I was very pleased to hear that President Zelensky is visiting here at the beginning of April. We exchanged view on a process that has to lead on both sides for an engagement that we have a true peace agreement, not only a ceasefire but also a true peace agreement. And therefore it was for us very important to exchange the views on how to get there.
We've always held the view that that conflict in the Ukraine and between Ukraine and Russia can only really be resolved through a negotiated settlement. As I'd like to believe that all wars and conflicts are. And we've always said that we want to hasten a peace settlement between Russia and Ukraine. And we've been saying exactly that to both parties. Whereas in the past we've been branded as being one-sided, our involvement in all this has proven and demonstrated that we are neutral, and we've been encouraging both Ukraine and Russia to find a peaceful solution. And we will continue to do so even when President Zelensky comes here. His coming here for us gives us an opportunity to encourage Ukraine and indeed encourage Russia in a number of other ways to find solutions for this conflict. We are very pleased that there seems now to be acceptance of the need for that conflict to be resolved as soon as possible. And as Ursula von der Leyen says, the people of Ukraine and indeed the people of Russia need more peace than anyone else in the world. And our task is to urge them, to encourage them, to nudge them in the way of finding a peaceful solution. That will be our key message as President Zelensky comes here. And indeed, I should add that we continue to send the same message to President Putin, as we believe that both countries, both of them, are the key role players in this, and all of us others who are on the side can just encourage them to move forward with the peace process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Peter?
Yeah, Mr. President, also if I may...
Please introduce yourself.
There are three presidents here, Peter. Which one are you referring to?
My name is Peter Fabricius from Daily Maverick. I have a question about CBAM, the Common Border Adjustment Mechanism. I understand that South Africa has some objections to aspects of it, and that it will be discussed in itself. South Africa is possibly looking for some kind of concessions or postponement or extension of the application of it. I wondered if you could just give us some idea if it was discussed, if it was resolved, or some compromise is going to be made.
Yes, it was discussed. It was a part of the discussions that ensued between South Africa and the European Union, and I'm glad to say that both of us are well disposed to finding a solution, and we are going to continue with our discussions. We've put certain proposals, and we are going to continue engaging. As we often say, there's always a solution to every problem or challenge, and we don't really see this one as an insurmountable one. So the various proposals, extension or some form of consideration or exemption are some of the issues that are being discussed. And we will find a very good, mutually beneficial solution on this matter. And so if you are able to stick around until November, you may well hear some good news. Thank you.
Yeah, we are in the process of listening very much to each other. What is necessary, important is that CBAM is a climate measure. It's not a trade measure, it's a climate measure. What are we doing? We basically put a price on carbon, and it is good to see that carbon pricing works. South Africa has also established its own carbon tax. It's a bit different than our emission trading system, but we have the same general approach that if you pollute, you have to pay. If you do not want to pollute, you engage in innovation or decarbonization, and this is rewarded. Very important is, as South Africa has a carbon tax paid by South African exporters, this will be deducted. This is very important. So no one has to pay twice. Very important message. And then we listened also to the worries and the concerns of South Africa and others, and we have started a process of simplification. We have basically, the process has to be finished in Parliament and Council, but we have proposed as Commission to exempt more or less 85%, up to 90%, I even think, of the companies, the scope of the companies that are falling under CBAM. So a huge amount, if not all, small and medium, anyhow, companies will be exempted not to do the work on CBAM, so a strong step into simplification. And our teams are working on the details that are now specific for South Africa and the European Union.
Thank you very much. Winnie?
Yes, hello, it's a question, Winnie from Radio France. It's a question for Ursula von der Leyen. Today, President Donald Trump threatened a 200% tariff on European champagnes and wines as a retaliation of the tariff on American whiskey. What will be, what should be the answer of Europe?
We don't like tariffs because we think that tariffs are taxes and they are bad for business and they are bad for consumers. We've always said that we will at the same time defend our interest. We've said it and we've shown it. But at the same time, I also want to emphasize that we are open for negotiations. The Trade Commissioner is in contact with his counterpart in the United States, and they will have a phone call tomorrow on exactly this issue.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Caroline.
Caroline Dumais from France 24. I've got an extra question for President Ramaphosa on the DRC. You say it was done in the context of a ceasefire, but I mean, we all know the situation at the moment, how fragile it is. What are the consequences of new troops leaving? Would it in question that new troops would go back under maybe the African Union or under another kind of umbrella? And what is the timeline? I mean, are the boys going to be back home in a few weeks, in a few months? I mean, how do you foresee that withdrawal? And another question for the European Union. You're talking about a global envelope of 4.7 billion. But I'd like to know what is actually the money devoted to the just transition in South Africa. the US has withdrawn $1 billion. It's a huge amount compared to the whole transition plan. Is the European Union going to basically fill the gap of what the US is taking away? What are the exact figures?
Mm-hmm.
The exit or the withdrawal, better still, is going to be a phased withdrawal from the DRC, and it will take into account the existing conditions as they evolve on the ground. Yes, the situation is precarious, but the peace as it is now is holding, and we're hoping to consolidate that as the withdrawal process moves on. And it should be seen as a confidence-building measure to consolidate the ceasefire and the peace. One of the other issues that will consolidate that is the commencement of negotiations and talks between state actors as well as non-state actors. We see this as one of those initiatives or interventions that are going to make sure that there is peace in the Eastern DRC. In the end, the African Union obviously is seized with this matter, and it will continue to examine precisely how it should all evolve. But as for SADC and the East African community, we want a ceasefire and we want a peace as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. President Costa, anything to add?
No, I think this question is clearly
Yeah,
for the Commission.
that was the Just Transition, Energy Transition Partnership. So indeed, it is regrettable that the United States are withdrawing. What we now have discussed, the 4.7 billion euro under Global Gateway, is fresh, is a new money coming. It's independent of the withdrawal of the United States. It is a Team Europe effort, if I may call it that way. So our signal is very clear. We stay the course. We think it is an absolute excellent project. We have plenty of work ahead of us, good work ahead of us, and therefore this fresh investment from Global Gateway, independent of the withdrawal of the United States.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of this media engagement session. You may take leave of us, Your Excellencies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good as usual.
No.